Hi, my name is Goldman. I'm the director and founder of Goldman & Associates. Our firm has a primary focus on family law issues here in Michigan. And today we're continuing our video series designed to educate and inform the public, so please subscribe to our channel. You know, there are different kinds of divorces within the broad spectrum of this area of the law. There's simple divorces where you got two 20-year-old kids and they're married for 16 months and all they have between them is a blender and two bean bags. It's a very easy case. No children, no assets, no nothing. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you may have a situation where there's a very difficult child custody arrangement that has to be hammered out or perhaps tried and decided by the court. Another area on the other side of the spectrum is your high asset divorce case. High assets could mean different things to different people. Let's say for the purposes of this video, high asset means the marital estate is more than $1 million. Let's say that those are the parameters. It's funny, one can argue that used to be the definition of high asset, 20 years ago, and now maybe it's $5 million, I don't know. But for the purpose of our discussion, I don't think it matters. What does matter is what are the key elements or the key factors that one needs to be mindful of if they find themselves in a situation of a high asset divorce. Well, you got a couple things to consider. Let's talk about the scenario where the high asset divorce comes as a result of the activity of one person. One person is running, let's say, a very successful business or is a highly skilled professional neurosurgeon or something like that. The other person is taking care of the 4 kids and the big dog and managing the house and doing all that. So now there's a divorce. So there's a couple of considerations, a couple of things that we're going to look at. One thing we're going to look at is what's the value of the assets and what's included in that pool. Well, we got a home. It's probably in a nice area and a high value home. We're going to have to look at that. If it's a marital asset, we're going to have to divide it. We're going to have to determine the value of it. There may be stocks and bonds. There may be mutual funds. There may be money in the bank, 401k, IRA, different kinds of deferred comp and pension plans and all these other things. These are assets that may be involved in the high asset case, and we've got to look at those because those have a value. Those have to be divided too. But perhaps the thing that presents the biggest challenge in the division in the high asset case, and one of the key factors in evaluating it, is the thing that funds the assets, that business, that profession, that medical practice, that legal practice. What are these things worth? You see, because in a scenario where the business was started and grown during the marriage, that business is a marital asset, which means that has a value, and that value has to be divided. Think of it this way. That business has a value in that it has provided handsomely for the support of the family for all these years, and it has the capability of continuing to provide the income, which will allow the person who's working that practice to continue to be a high earner. Well, that has a value. That has a present-day value. That future income, there's a way to evaluate it in order to determine, well, what's it really worth? If a business makes $1 million in a year, that doesn't mean the business is worth $1 million. If the business makes $1 million and is capable of making $1 million for the next 10, 20, 30 years, that's got to be factored in it too. The cost that the business incurs to make that money has to be factored as well. Just because it grosses a certain amount doesn't mean that's what it's worth. There are businesses that operate on a 5% margin. A business makes $1 million, it's only worth $50,000. But there are businesses that operate on a 30% margin. So business makes $1 million, but there's $300,000 in profits available. And if it can pay somebody $300,000 indefinitely, that's a very valuable asset. So when you get into these high asset divorces, it's very important to have a proper evaluation of the business. The parties might agree on what that number is, but assuming that they don't, and in my scenario, the housewife who's watching the kids is probably not going to know what the medical practice is worth. There are businesses, there are experts who can evaluate this. They can determine what the value of it based on all sorts of factors, and they are often going to be hired in these kind of cases in order to put a proper number on the business. If you have any questions about your case, reach out, and of course we'll be glad to help you out.